I do remember when like I would do the test, Gloria would like come back into the office and then she'd be like, what is that smell? Like she would be like, what just happened? What died in here?
I think when we did the comparison that came to mind was split pea soup left in the sun.
Yeah. All right. Welcome back to the Chemist Confessions podcast. I'm Victoria.
And I'm Gloria.
And this is a human conversation on all the skincare science we talk about on the daily. And today is a big one. Today is our CE Ferulic review part 2, because we did a CE Ferulic dupe test 2 years ago. We're really excited about this one.
Yeah, this has been hotly requested since we did the first round of tests.
Yeah.
And last year we were like, we'll totally do this. And then it kind of fell through the cracks. So really excited to get this going.
Yeah, so we should provide some background on what the heck we're even talking about to give you guys a little bit of an explanation on CE Ferulic and dupe, if those words sound very new to you. CE Ferulic is in reference to SkinCeuticals' most famous serum, which is their vitamin C serum. And this combination of vitamin C, vitamin E, and ferulic acid is patented, and this combination has been shown to help with overall stability and has been proven with many years of research for its true antioxidant efficacy for skin. And with that SkinCeuticals price tag comes dupes.
Yeah, so we always joke that SkinCeuticals measure, basically CE Ferulic pricing measures the length at which we've been in the industry. And if you're curious, I think both of us entered the skincare formulation chemist field when SkinCeuticals CE Ferulic cost about $140. It might have been $135. I think it's something in that realm. And a couple years ago when we did the first round test, we were like, oh my God, it's like $170 now, crazy. And I am happy to report that as of recording today, May 2025, CE Ferulic now retails for $182.
You know, I remember back when we used to work for L'Oreal, one of the perks was sometimes getting a credit towards whatever L'Oreal brands that they have. And that back then, even with credit and discount and everything, on our, first job out, it felt like a lot. And then now seeing the price tag, you're like, yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
It's funny that you mentioned that side story. That was pretty much one of those formulas that back in those days, I would definitely just make my own because I'm like, hell no, I'm not using all my credits for this serum.
Yeah, exactly.
And now it's like, you can't even afford that with the credit anymore.
Yeah, so, okay, so you know the history, SkinCeuticals CE Ferulic, very expensive. And with its patent done and expired, there's now a ton of more affordable CE Ferulic dupes. When we first did the first study 2 years ago, the reason why we did it was because ultimately people were just asking us like, which one should they use? Yeah. And we were thinking like, what is a good way of doing some sort of comparison that, we can tap into our chemist evaluation expertise and see if we could provide some sort of at least like shopping guidelines for this dupe category, which only seems to be expanding. So with the second round, we should go and explain that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've got 7 dupes that we tested. I'll go through them right now. So they are the Vichy Lift Active Brightening. This is a 15% ascorbic acid serum. We've got our Cerave. This is an emulsion. So it's a 10% vitamin C emulsion. We've got the Prequel Lucent C Brightening Vitamin C at 15% ascorbic acid. We've got Geek and Gorgeous, which is also a 15% vitamin C. We've got Claire's, which is the lowest at 5% vitamin C. We've got a newcomer, which is Wild Fleur. They're sold at Ulta, also with a 15% vitamin C. And finally, we have La Roche Posay's 12% vitamin C serum.
So a big range of product and slightly different formulation types in this mix. We should go over the basic protocols. This is kind of a quick and dirty test that we did across the board. We buy them all off shelf. However long they'll be sitting there, that's just what you get in the store setting. And then we put them all into a oven and basically slow bake them for over 6 weeks. This elevated temperature setting is a pretty common practice to emulate how this product would change over time, sitting on the shelves or sitting at home. And with vitamin C, these type of tests can be very revealing very quickly. We ran this test for 6 weeks, and it's kind of, let's just say all the formulas have gone through a few evolutions during that time.
Yeah, and I definitely want to mention that this is, with vitamin C, because it's a high degradation or quick degradation type of formula, this is the test settings that we use is only actually just it's a smaller test. Actually, it's a shorter test, but it's definitely enough for us to draw a few conclusions. So I should also mention that on top of these 7 formulas, just for funsies, we decided to add in a positive control this time of just vitamin C, 15% vitamin C in solution, just to have some sort of comparison. Also because our ferulic acid at this point is about just way too old. So we were like
it's like
we'll
3
do
years
a positive
expired.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, hopefully that gives you an idea of the test we have set up. But before we get into the results, let's take a quick break.
A quick message from our sponsor for this episode. Yeah, that's right. We are interrupting our regular scheduled product shout out with a very special announcement.
We're talking to you, industry insiders, brand friends, and chemist friends. If you plan to be at New York Suppliers Day this year at the Javits Center, we would love to see you day 1, Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025. Please stop by the BASF booth at 4 p.m. sharp. Consider this little event with us and BASF as the pre-happy hour to all the rooftop happy hours that follow. We will be leading a very brief panel with BASF's very own personal care experts to learn more about all of their great work in ingredient synergy, specifically cleansing surfactant synergy. Additionally, they'll be showcasing some BASF-built tools that are truly meant to help us formulators in modern-day personal care formulation. A lot of cool work, a lot of effort, a lot of ingredients to share. So please stop by and say hello. We'd love to see you guys.
Now, for non-industry friends and skincare aficionados, there will be no FOMO. If you have no idea what we're talking about, just know that BASF is a massive European chemical company. They provide lots of ingredients across many sectors, from agriculture, food, to even personal care. Through this collaboration, we'll be doing a dedicated cleanser surfactant deep dive on this podcast in conjunction with Victoria's 100-Day Double Cleansing Challenge. This will highlight everything we have learned through this collab, and it's a unique peek behind the curtains of the beauty industry. We hope you'll find it enjoyable and hopefully learn a few new things about cleanser science. Now back to the podcast.
All right, so it's time to talk about the results. So we'll go ahead and show what T0 looks like of all 7. Nothing truly out of the ordinary, to be honest. I would probably say I'm going to go ahead and say I really don't like the Vichy bottle. It's not fun. It's messy. It drips. I just right out of the gate, I already, it's not my favorite.
It's such a standard case of form over function.
Yeah.
A marketer, I'm sorry if it's not a marketer, someone saw this bottle and be like, it looks very medicinal and effective. Let's do it. And they never try to actually use it themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
For those of you listening, the Vichy bottle is essentially kind of like it's just like a hard tip that goes over. It looks like a dropper tip, but because it's in a glass bottle, the bottle itself doesn't squeeze. So you have to basically shake it out of this very non-functional decorative pipette tip that attaches to the glass bottle.
Yeah, it's a good point. And the other thing we should mention here for audio listeners is that of these, most of these are droppers, except for Prequels, which is a pump, and then Cerave, which looks like they tried to do more of those conservative, what word am I looking for?
Aluminum
a conservative squeeze tube, aluminum tube with a more tight sealed cap. And I would say the other thing, we mentioned how these are CE Ferulic dupes, but not all of them actually utilize ferulic acid. So that's the other thing, even though these are all ascorbic acid serums.
Yeah. So we go ahead and bake it for 2 weeks, and right away, even as short as 2 weeks, we're already starting to see some changes in these products. So from the initial, you can see from lab sample, because it's super duper fresh, it is so clear that you can barely tell that it's on the table. And that's what it looks like when it's really freshly made. But then, of course, when you're buying these products, they have been stored in transportation for some time. That's why even the lightest one, which in this case is probably the clearest and the Geek and Gorgeous, they are a little bit more tinted than the really fresh lab batch. We wouldn't say any of them is super alarming that early light yellowing is very normal and it's still retaining most of the efficacy. The only one when I saw, I kind of drew a mini question mark is Fleur, to be honest.
Yeah, it's pretty yellow. Yeah, for sure. But let's talk about week 2. Because week 2 was already quite surprising. We'll go ahead and show a screenshot of the initial before we even open the bottles. And you can tell that there is one that is not like the other.
La Roche Posay, what happened to you? What happened to you? When I saw that image, this was all, some of it was done when I was out of town. And when Victoria showed me the picture, I was like, oh my God, it's
My
that
word.
pipette. My word, that pipette. How have you changed?
Yeah. We're also just going to be mindful for listeners, but the La Roche Posay bulb has expanded to an alarming degree. And I just want to mention that sometimes Gloria and I will do content around like when it's time to throw your product away. And usually when something balloons like this, we already tell you it's a bad sign. So I'm just shocked that even just after 2 weeks, this was the end result. So it's not looking good for that one.
So one more thing you mentioned for everyone looking at this is there's like 2 red flags. The balloon is a red flag. And I'm also shocked by how uneven it is. So sometimes you can see pipette tips like evenly get pushed out just a little bit. Like it might look a little chunkier than before, but the Roche Posay is ballooned and lopsided. That's like double no.
Yeah. So we open it up. We do our test drops side by side. And you can see, just continuing and wrapping up on La Roche Posay, that the dropper itself has visibly deformed even after the gas has been released. So it's not a good sign. Usually that just means that there's going to be a failure in the use of the bulb itself and the material. The other thing that was also surprising was Prequel. And time again, we talk about how vitamin C serums in airless pumps will have sputtering. But I am just shocked at the high pressure sputtering that is Prequel.
Yeah, we get this question a lot, which is, okay, vitamin C is unstable in presence of air, so why are they in droppers and not airless pumps? This is why. The gas release is normal. It just happens to all ascorbic acid formulas to various degrees. But in airless pumps, it gets caught up in the pump, it sputters, and sometimes that might mean the pump goes south a little faster as well. It's all sorts of problems. But Prequel, it's not just sputtery, it's like...
It's like fire hydrant sputtering.
Yeah.
So that was very surprising for us. And I also should mention that most of these, upon unscrewing the cap, you can hear a little bit of that like gas release. So yeah, again, that's very normal to vitamin C serums. And then the other note I had to mention was about Cerave, because when I went to squeeze out Cerave, there is actually a little bit of liquid separation, just a smidge. And so that, it was like when I had squeezed a little bit onto like my glove. And then, but once I actually squeezed out the formula onto the table, there's still like uniform drops. So I found that to be a little weird, but I'm not going to write it off. And then I guess we should also mention Fleur, a truly unique one there.
We call CE Ferulic or vitamin C serums our beloved hot dog water because it tends to have a meaty scent. And for those of you who've used the OG formula know exactly what we're talking about. And this smell really comes out in these kind of accelerated stability tests. So a certain degree of hot dogginess is normal, but Fleur is like meaty. That scent is really, it's like ham is baking in there, and that kind of threw us off a little bit too.
All right, so let's get right into the 4 weeks results, and we'll just say that it's generally more of the same. There's actually not a ton of new takeaways at this time point.
Yep, bulbous bulb on La Roche Posay, still bulbous, Prequel still sputtery, things are getting a little darker, generally par for course. So let's go straight to 6 weeks.
I did want to mention that, interestingly, LRP's like ballooning of the droppers still occurred. So it's not just like a one-time buildup. It's still initially just as large. And at this point, you can feel that the dropper itself, that elasticity has really gone and left the bulb.
Feels great.
Doesn't feel great. And then, it's like, so Prequel sputtering is just as high pressured as the first time we checked in. So I find that like these scenarios to be quite interesting compared to when we did this test the first time. It's all very active. Like it's more active than our last test for sure.
Yep. So back in the oven they go. And this brings us to 6 weeks. Generally speaking, everything kind of progressed as we thought. So the whatever is bad has gotten worse. So for example, the LRP bulb is now truly dead. It's so hard to squeeze anything out because all the elasticity has gone. It looks bulbous because the gas continuously push it out. But as soon as we press down on it, let's just say it really stayed in that press down configuration, which feels real bad.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that Gloria and I were kind of like shocked by was even the glass tip attached to the bulb, that connection is not great. And actually we kind of discovered that even all the way back from week 2. So I think of all the vitamin C packaging we've encountered, I think this is the biggest failure of the ones we've tested so far. Like this truly around is just not good. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you know, the weird thing is, I think it's such a shame because I actually don't think this is a bad vitamin C formula. It's just like they kind of shot themselves in the finish line. Of all the formulas we tested, this is one of the few that's actually, it's fragrance. And I have to say the fragrance is chosen really well. Even though the formula looks a little sad, it's clearly not working out in the packaging. It smells great. Like whoever chose the fragrance, definitely put work into it. What I mean by it's not just a fragrance covering up the meaty smell. When you put it on your face, you actually barely smell anything. It's designed to almost neutralize that undesirable meaty smell. So I'm like, you put in all that thought on the formulation. How did you pick such a garbage dropper to put that formula in?
Yeah. No, it's so true. And we should talk about some of the positive things. I think, for example, Geek and Gorgeous was actually a pretty impressive formula to me all around. First of all, the dropper choice, you can tell, is very robust. I think it's the exact opposite of La Roche Posay in that thing feels like triple layered. Overall, it's just least offensive, the general stability of it, the gas release, everything from the color to the smell, everything I would say is very classical to the SkinCeutical CE Ferulic. So I was actually really impressed by that one.
It totally makes sense if you look at the ingredient list. We'll put that up on the screen. Compared to some of the other ones, it has a relatively simplistic ingredient list that is very reminiscent of the classic CE Ferulic. Yeah. And I will say, is it me or of all the ones we tested this round, this is actually the only formula that uses all 3 ingredients from the OG trios: vitamin C, vitamin E in the tocopherol form, as well as ferulic acid. A lot of the other formulas that we tested will add in either other antioxidants, take out one of the OG3, or they would change out the form of vitamin E. So this kind of almost makes a case that the OG blend is there for a reason, and this is a pretty solid dupe all around.
Yeah, and can I just say, cheapest one by far, $13.90. So just all around, I think this is just an overall winner. I was honestly very impressed. So I do want to mention is I think Prequel and Vichy serums are all on par. This is all normal. There's nothing strange about the way this has aged in terms of color and smell. While Prequels by week 6 still sputtered at an alarming rate, these all seem generally fine. And Vichy's formula is the one that actually uses the neohesperin penis pinaster combination that has been in a few clinical studies. So that's the one that's just man, I really don't like the packaging, but formula wise and this general dupe test is definitely a product that can be considered for sure.
Yeah, Prequel is in that category too, where that sputtering, that airless pump is just ugh. But they also added their own combination. I don't love niacinamide being here, but it's fine. But there's also, they added relatively newer antioxidant, I actually don't know industry-wise how people pronounce it. I always call it ergothioneine, but
I like the way you say it. We'll go with there.
Cool. They do use ferulic acid, but they replace the vitamin E with a relatively newer antioxidant superstar on the block, ergothioneine, and throwing a little niacinamide in the mix. Formula robustness is generally fine. Don't love the packaging, but really love that they actually did their own clinical on this blend.
Yeah, so they had a consumer perception as well as a clinical study with, I believe, expert grading. They have a few metrics that even one that's 4 weeks of once daily use has a significant improvement in radiance and luminance. So, for a drugstore vitamin C serum, it's got testing. So generally a solid formula that we would consider a pass. The next one we should definitely talk about, Gloria, is Wild Fleur.
that smell evolution that we mentioned earlier just got wilder. It went from baked ham to fermented baked ham in 6 weeks.
Okay, I gotta be honest, guys. I was lured into Wild Fleur because I thought their story was pretty clever. So the story behind Wild Fleur is vitamin C formula is that they actually have a little bit of oil included. I believe in Wild Fleurs they have squalane, and they've got, let's see what else they've got. They've got like, Gloria's favorite, sweet almond oil, but just a general blend of oils. The idea would be that this oil protective layer would be able to protect the water-based formula underneath. So generally pretty clever. So I was like, all right, let's give it a try. After 6 weeks, the smell, the way the formula looks like in the dropper, you can see that it's almost like these droplets start clinging to the glass dropper, and it looks like the formula, obviously there's going to be like some separation. All of that combined basically gave me a lot of PTSD from when we tested the CosRx Vitamin C Serum last time. And lo and behold, it turns out they're the same, because CosRx also has a few oils as well, and I think the same concept around there. So all that to say is, I think not necessarily from an efficacy standpoint, from the smell alone, it evolves to such a degree that that's just something that if you think the tech is interesting, you want to try, like that would be probably the biggest warning from us, is that it's really strong. It's more than meat flavor at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely very stinky. And I remember the CosRx smell because let's just say it's not something you can remove from your brain once you've smelled it.
I do remember when like I would do the test, Gloria would like come back into the office and then she'd be like, what is that smell? Like she would be like, what just happened? What died in here?
I think when we did the CosRx, the comparison that came to mind was split pea soup left in the sun.
Yeah. It's very organic in not a good way. All right. So other than that, I think the other one that we just like haven't talked about at all is Claire's. Claire's, I gotta be honest, from a chemist standpoint, is the funkiest formula to me, because seeing it in a clear jar just gives
Feels
me
bad.
like all sense of anxiety, and just I don't understand this one. But in terms of by week 6, the evolution is so minimal. The color of the formula is not that yellow. Obviously it's a much lower concentration, but yeah, I think that's just one of the visuals that I wanted to make note for everyone there.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and it's one of the few that's formulated at a transparent but lower percentage of 5%. And we do usually point people there as one of the few low concentration options you can get. Overall very interesting, and those are basically a rundown of all of our observations throughout the 6 weeks. We're gonna take a quick break, and we're gonna sum all of this up with our chemist thoughts, what we would use, what we avoid like the plague, and some general Q&As.
All right, it's time for the animal fun fact. All right, Laura, this animal fun fact is going to be super short, super straightforward. I feel like I'm starting to go down the rabbit hole of what interesting animal tests, like behavioral psychology or whatever tests, have been done out there. Turns out there's a surprising amount of studies about getting wildlife drunk and like seeing the results. So if you guys remember, maybe from like 2 years ago, we talked about how a lab was like capturing monkeys and offering them drinks to see like what would happen. And they were able to like classify like different drunks based on the type of monkey and the drinks they drank and whatever. So I actually found that there's 3 separate studies. One study was done on pigs where they gave them vodka or wine. And it ended up, they wanted to look at cardiovascular health of pigs. And so there's that one. The second one was on finches, where they basically added 6% alcohol to juice, and they put it in like a water bottle for them to drink. And what's really strange is the scientists would be like, I didn't think they drink it because it's alcohol, but it turns out that they don't mind it. And they noticed that through there, they were slurring their songs, and they were saying that oh, this could be interesting in learning about how song development and speech development in birds, So
that's
how?
hilarious.
I don't know.
But who approved this study? Like,
Totally
let's
agree.
see if they would get drunk.
Totally agree. And then Gloria, I think you know this one. There was a study done way back in the day where
hilarious.
They basically got spiders high on all sorts of drugs. And still think this is to this day one of the most fascinating studies, but they gave them different types, from marijuana to caffeine to even a sedative, and they wanted to see how that would affect their web building. So we'll put an image up on the screen of what these webs looked like. I'll give you a tidbit on it, but one of the best lines is, spiders on marijuana are so laid back, they weave just so much of their webs, and then, well, it just doesn't seem to matter anymore. And then they said that for the drug chloral hydrate, which is actually a sedative that's given for short-term insomnia, they said the spiders just like drop off before they even get started. They're like, I can't even. So just fascinating. And why people do this, our scientists do this, I don't know if there was a tie to benefit humans or the development of these creatures, but yeah, very strange.
I love the study. I remember when it first came out because it's just such a visual way of like, it's like, you know, those like people, those like memes, it's like your brain on acid and it's like some crazy image, but this is like that, but with spiders. And the marijuana web missing basically was like, it's doing its thing and then it lost track and then just kind of stopped. It's like very relatable. But the one that always jumped out at me is caffeine. The caffeine one is super crazy. Of course, it could mean that like the caffeine affects spiders. Obviously, it's spiders, so it could very well be very different than how caffeine affects us. But it straight up looks like the spider has done lost it. It's no longer a web-like. It doesn't look like, even like the sedative, it looks like, even though it says the spider dropped off before it started, it at least look like it's trying to start something. Yeah, but the caffeine one's like, I'm gonna build a web. I'm gonna build a web. This is not a web. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't care. It's like super crazy.
Caffeine is a hell of a drug, guys.
Really, really is. But I love it. Yay!
Yeah,
all the drunk animals.
All the drunk animals. Poor drunk animals. I don't know if they asked for it, but you know. All right,
guys. Let's wrap this episode up with some takeaways and some of your hot vitamin C questions.
Before we draw conclusions, let's make sure we're considering all the things. So we should definitely mention that this test doesn't necessarily tell us like how much vitamin C is left in the formula after doing this sort of aging test. In order to do that, we would have to do a much more formal measurement like HPLC. And let's be honest, we're not going to throw budget at that. But this is something that chemists regularly do in terms of evaluating shelf life and stability of formulas aesthetically. There's certain visual and sensory indicators that we can look for in this kind of testing that we would consider like in essentially a pass-fail kind of scenario. So that's how we're basing, you know, some of these conclusions that we make.
Absolutely. Please do not take a screenshot of our video and send it to these brands. Be like, this turned brown on Chemist Confessions. What gives? Like, it's not. It's again, it's a pass-fail test. It shows the evolution on more accelerated timeline. So that's it. We are still able to see some directional changes and some formulations that we like more than others. But
you know, still haven't been able to, we can't answer that. So the other thing I should mention is that all this time I was like, for funsies, positive control vitamin C lab sample that we made. Turns out it wasn't that helpful. You know, I should definitely mention that, you know, I was hoping that could be like a hard comparison of like, well, if it's worse than that, then it's not good. But at the end of the day, like, you know, it's freshly made. Well, these have already been through production before, you know, think about the time spent in production and logistics and fulfillment to get to the shelf in which you purchase. Like there's already time baked into that before we even purchase the product to do this study. So it didn't actually end up helping that much in terms of making any conclusion. So I did want to acknowledge that one point. So with all of that in consideration, all right, Gloria, which ones would we recommend?
I think we kind of hinted at it already in the last section, but in terms of based on this test, the best is probably Geek and Gorgeous. Not only is it the only one that uses the OG3 trio in terms of color, evolution, and even texture, smell, everything else, it checks basically all the boxes.
Yeah, for sure. The second one is actually surprisingly Cerave. Well, I guess it's not even surprising. I had alluded to how week 2 was kind of a murky start, but you know, throughout the 6-week test, I didn't see that again. So I'm going to just chalk that up to there's probably some sort of product or residual that was left in the cap or the nozzle. but the formula stayed uniform throughout that entire period. And to be honest, the coloring and smell didn't really evolve over those 6 weeks, even after the 2-week mark. So I thought, overall, it's pretty good for a 10% ascorbic acid.
Lastly, we do like the Prequel formula. The evolution was pretty okay, and the color was good. The formula felt good on. We would definitely recommend one of those formulas to just, once you get it, once you open it, just use it all the way through. Like, don't wait for that sputter effect to come out. That's our general recommendation for all ascorbic acid serums anyway, but for this one, it's definitely not the zone you want to get into.
Yeah, so definitely comes with a splash zone warning for sure. All right. In terms of ones we would avoid. All right. I think for me, this is more like personally, which ones would I just never, I wouldn't want to use. Wild Fleur, just for the scent. I think Gloria and I are willing to put up with a degree of scent just because we kind of understand that most good actives come with those kinds of scent quirks. But I think this one's pretty strong for me. This might be too much.
Yeah, I agree. And I think some of the other mini aesthetic things that's hard for us to capture in the pictures also make me feel kind of weird, like the way the oil globules kind of look over time and just scent alone, all of those. And because of the oils, I also didn't love this one's texture. So just like overall meh. And the second one in this category has to be La Roche Posay.
Eye-opening. If I were to put money on one that I thought I was going to just punt off the earth, it would not be this one. I got to be honest.
Yeah, and honestly, the formula seems like it could be okay, but my lord, that packaging did not give it a chance. I was going to say, of like all the things on my wish list, I'm not one that's usually super offended by the hot dog water smell per se. But if you're telling me that, here is a version of CE Ferulic, we added a fragrance to it, and then it perfectly neutralizes the hot dog water smell, I'll be like, oh, that's awesome. I definitely use it. So I'm like, so this to me is definitely one of those, oh, come on, guys. Find better droppers.
Yeah, and I think if you guys had listened to the previous episodes about just vitamin C anhydrous versus water serums, we kind of alluded to overall vitamin C stability. And even if your formula itself is stabilized, I truly think it's only going to be as good as the armor you put it in, which is the 100%. Packaging. So you need both components for this formula to be successful. And so, wow, honestly, I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
This one, the formula interacted so much with the packaging. Like Victoria mentioned, it's not even just the bulbous pipette. The way that the pipette tip loosened up also feels like it's like making pals with it. It just doesn't feel good, to the extent that I feel like I can't even give this formula much of an evaluation, because who knows what that interaction did to the formula. But anyway, that's that.
Yes. And so with that, we should do a couple mentions about some of the products we didn't mention, which is Vichy. I personally think the formula is fine. There's nothing wrong with this. I think you just have to know that the use experience is going to be a bit cumbersome and just a little messy. Yeah.
Yeah, last but not least is Clears. It's still one of the few options on the market that you can get at that 5% level. A lot of times we get people with sensitive skin ask us like, 15% feels too much. I'm worried about irritation. We'll say, all right, Clears is one of the only ones with 5%. That one, strictly speaking, with this test, passed pretty well. The color evolution is super, super mild, and we can't ding it for that at all. It's just that the clear bottle kind of gives us the heebie-jeebies. That plus the fact that Clears have a much more complex formula than the rest. It has a pretty long ingredient list with a lot of extracts, even some peptides and some light oils here and there. To me, this feels like one of those, it could be fine. I kind of wish they maybe did a clinical and something else to validate it further, just because it kind of checks the boxes, but the some of the aspects of the packaging and the formula kind of makes me feel a little uneasy.
Yeah, for sure. It's just, there's something about clear and unstable ingredients that just, it feels a little, it's just like a faux pas, like you're just not, it's weird for formulators. So, but at the same time, there's nothing wrong with it if you are using it. So with that ends our evaluation. And we really hope that ultimately this is helpful for you guys as you guys are exploring the vitamin C landscape. We got a lot of requests to test all sorts of serums and serums that we could not include in all of this. There just isn't enough time. And at the end of the day, there's more stuff we want to cover. But hopefully with how we evaluate it, some of the tips and some of the things we look for, you can utilize that as you are on your ascorbic acid journey to find one that you can rely on and feel confident in. So we should go through some of the Q&A that came in about CE Ferulic and vitamin C.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for everyone who left questions. This was the first time we tried polling y'all on YouTube directly instead of we typically do on Insta Story.
Yeah.
We realized that, you know, we were asking you guys to stumble upon our polls on Instagram, which doesn't feel super natural. But we weren't sure if people will see on YouTube. But we got so many questions and it's awesome. So thank you guys so much. We got a few of these on the original CE Ferulic formula patent. And someone asked, thoughts on the end of SkinCeuticals patent on CE Ferulic formula? First of all, I want to say that there are many brands out there that basically treat this impending end as a fact long before it became a fact. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure
end of the patent was happening years ago.
Yeah. So yay. I think like it's only going to open up the door to more dupes, but ironically, on the other end of it, we're also going to see a lot more, I guess, needs for episodes like this, because now that the patent is, they might have tried to extend it. I haven't done a landscape, but essentially it opens up the door for a lot of dupes. But then in order to stand out from all these vitamin C serums, brands are starting to get creative, as you can see from even this episode. So it's like a double-edged sword. It's like, oh, great, now everyone can borrow from this patent, but well, now there's 1,000 CE Ferulics out there. How do we differentiate ourselves? Let's get cute with the formula. And then that opens up the door for subpar vitamin C serums as well.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I think L'Oreal has made its money on this guy. You know, it's not like they didn't get there. So, and with the price of SkinCeuticals now, I think the end of this patent is perfectly fine. Business as usual, you know. But I totally agree with Gloria. Hopefully you guys can tell there are a lot of quirks with ascorbic acid. There's a lot of due diligence and validation that needs to be done to ensure, not just from formulation, but you can see from packaging to storage to even how you're going to be moving these pallets of this product across the country. Like, all of this is important. So I think that's where, usually when dupe culture comes around, that means cutting corners. We're all about cutting corners. So Gloria and I don't think we plan to when we did the first CE Ferulic, I don't think we plan to do another one. I think like when we did that first one, we were like, this is just an example to show you how we would evaluate and compare so that you guys can go and evaluate yourselves. And then there are more that came out. I got to be honest, I don't know if there's going to be a part 3. I think there's just too many out there. And like, you know, I feel like this is already a pretty good foundation for everyone to go and evaluate and get a sense of, you know, the quirks around this formula. But yeah, agreed. There's just going to be more. Everyone should expect it.
So we got quite a few questions that inspired basically the previous episode. I want to address it again, these questions more directly in this episode. We got questions like thoughts on no water formulas like the Stratia. We got another question on the most innovative formulation techniques like the Murad, kind of Steven, L'Oreal silicone formulas. How do they compare to CE Ferulic? Last episode, we kind of did all the nitty-gritty research to kind of cover our point, but I just want to sum it up again. The reason why we didn't test the Stratia and the silicone and hydrous waterless formulas along with CE Ferulic, because it's so different. It's like comparing apples to oranges, and they're fine from a stabilizing vitamin C perspective, but we have a little bit more questions on what other antioxidants are they in combination of. And a lot of the original testing on CE Ferulic was around a certain pH level and actual tested efficacy that these formulas are just a bit lacking on. There's no, we don't see a lot of data backing that, okay, even though it's in a pH-less, waterless formula, it will penetrate just as much, or the vitamin C will perform to the same degree, or it will perform without other vitamins. So it's a complex question to say. We still value the water-based serums above these waterless types, but they are still worth a try if the stability really bugs you.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I also want to mention that we actually tried the Ordinary's anhydrous ascorbic acid serum in propane diol the first time we did that. But you can see in that comparison that has no, you wouldn't have a takeaway. It was perfectly fine. There was no development. So I just want to put that out there that like, yeah, I think it's just like the emphasis is you're comparing apples to oranges, and formulation, I guess, actives in different types of formulation will cause its mode of activity and behavior in skin to, it will have an effect and it will be different. So yeah, I think that's a great point to highlight on.
And the last question I want to address very quickly is on vitamin C derivatives. Someone asked, what does it mean that THD ascorbate is oil soluble from a practical perspective? Is it not going to work that well if used in a toner? Can it not be used on damp skin? And then also, too, with THDA being stable, does it matter if the formulation is brown? Do some brands make it brown on purpose? If so, why is the PTR serum so brown?
The so with so many O's is so revealing. The number of O's equates to the level of brownness that I can visualize. So thank you for that. But there's a lot to unpack here.
I'm going to answer this backwards. So stability.
Yeah,
I'm going to sum it up as derivative does not equal stable. It might be more stable than ascorbic acid, but that is not a gimme. You know, a lot of the derivatives, including THD, have their own quirks, and their stability in formulas need to be evaluated individually. THD ascorbate is not fully stable. I would say if it turns brown, that's still not a good look.
So brown. If it's so
Extra
brown
not
and
good.
so brown, I would say that's not a good sign. I don't think that's normal, and guarantee you they're not pigmenting it to make it more brown, because no one would do that. So yeah.
And then a follow-up note on that is I have tested a few THD ascorbate formulas where I've noticed, because it's done in emulsion, because THD ascorbate is oil soluble, I've seen some separation, and that can happen when emulsions get a little funky with active ingredients. I will say if it's brown, first red flag. If it's brown and separating, triple red flag, toss that out.
Yeah. And I guess to follow up on we're working backwards. So to answer the question about THD being oil soluble is not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually makes it quite unique, and it kind of opens up the landscape for vitamin C, essentially, in how we formulate it. For it to be in a toner, it's going to have to be in an emulsion, because oil components, water, remember, they don't like to get along. So you're going to have to either it's going to be a biphase, and it's probably going to be a pretty ugly biphase, or they're going to have to make it some sort of milky toner. And if it's not doing any of that and it's crystal clear water, then I would be very concerned about the concentration of THD in the toner. And to answer your question about applying on damp or dry skin, well, yes, if you super soak your face, it can help with the penetration of actives. Let's be real, we can't just super soak our face every night, and spend that time. Just apply it damp, dry, however you can, just consistently apply something. That's the best way to ensure you're getting that effectiveness. There is one more question that has come up a few times, also because we're friends with some of the founders, but a few of you have asked us to review Educated Messes and Naturium's Gold C. That's the gold particle coated with vitamin C. That is also similar to Gloria discussing, Stratia's anhydrous formula, is another type of vitamin C realm. While yes, it is ascorbic acid, obviously when you use some sort of encapsulation or technique like that, it suddenly puts it in a different tier. So I just wanted to explain why you guys didn't see that product, even though there were many of you that wanted to see that test happen too. Completely different realm. The concentrations are going to be completely different. So I just wanted to provide that insight for you guys.
Yep, and that's about it for this episode. Thank you all so much for your questions. We got a lot more. Hopefully we can address it on social and later down the road.
Yeah.
After this, we go right into our sunscreen series, and we tested some great formulas this year, so really excited to share. In the future, we're going to poll you guys more for questions on YouTube, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, if you have any burning questions, you can also leave a comment down below. We will see you guys next week. Bye, guys!